All right. Welcome back. Another episode of Chainlink Sports Talk. Today I have Stephen Rosen and Brock Bennett. Stephen is a minor league hitting coach with the Minnesota Twins, newly minted minor league hitting coach of the Minnesota Twins, and Brock is a assistant baseball coach for Georgia baseball. So two guys here, who are actually starting up a podcast, group of people over there trying to get this started up. So I love that. Thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having us. Yeah, appreciate it. Looking forward to it, man.
No problem. Absolutely. So, Stephen, I want to start with you. So I know that before you got this job with the Twins, you were with Notre Dame. You were the director of baseball operations over there. So what I want to know is what has that transition been like, going from, a college program, where you still have a lot of responsibilities, like that's a pretty big school, takes pride in its athletics, and you're kind of overseeing the whole operation there in terms of the baseball side, but now you're kind of going into more maybe like a specific role with the Twins being a hitting coach. So what's that change been like for you so far?
Yeah, exactly. To be honest with you, when you take any operations role, you're really entering a role where communication is the most important thing. Communicating everything that goes on in the organization to everybody in the athletic department that needs to know what's happening. So being pushed into an ops position, and specifically at a school like the University of Notre Dame, where things are done a certain way and done right a certain way, that experience has really developed my communication skills, my ability to plan ahead of time, to organize my thoughts, and properly and effectively communicate that to, like I said, everybody involved with Notre Dame baseball that had a hand in the production of the organization. So with that being said, now transitioning into a hitting coach role, that ability to communicate the information that my hitting coordinators, my bosses are presenting to me, then to our players, that communication skills becomes super important. So having that experience to go back to has really been tremendous for me in my new role with the Twins, especially working through a language barrier where a lot of the players I'm working with are Spanish speaking. Having communication skills and the ability to plan and organize your thoughts and then take it a step further and get that information to the hands and the minds of the players is huge. So I can't be any more grateful for my opportunity, having had a position in ops and for what it did in my future in coaching.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually had the pleasure of speaking with Brooks Webb. He's the operations guy over at Vanderbilt baseball, and he said the same thing. Like communication is key on all levels, and everybody in the sports world almost, like I'm not even gonna say baseball world, because Vanderbilt is so dominant in baseball, that they're known more widely than baseball, but he really emphasized the point of communication all throughout the program through Coach Corbin and his staff, and through him and the players, and having like that common culture. So that seems to be like a similar theme when I asked that question.
Exactly, and honestly, we try to mimic a lot of what Vanderbilt baseball does in terms of their process. That was a lot of how we tried to operate in terms of an organization, and what we wanted to do as far as our operations processes. I luckily that had Brooks as a resource of mine, a good friend of mine too. So being able to talk with him and learn from other operations directors across the country to see how they continue to help their organizations grow in their own ways, and understanding every school requires a little bit different of a process, but at the end of the day, communication is always the most important, and the same is true in coaching. So while some hitting coaches might believe in one philosophy while another believes in something else, the ability to communicate that information to the player is still a necessity. And so having those experiences in ops to go look back on and reflect on and use in my coaching has been absolutely critical. So if there's anybody out there who's listening who has been presented with the opportunity to be an ops guy, or is considering that idea, thinking that it might help them in their coaching career, you're absolutely right. And it's definitely something you should consider, because you're going to be a better person and a better coach at the end of your experience in ops.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So while we're kind of on the topic of college programs, Brock, I want to send it over to you. And I'm just curious about, you guys at Georgia, and I guess how you run things. So what separates you guys in terms of, other college programs, in terms of like the culture there, and how you guys try to run your program, and maybe the values that you try to instill into your players?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think at the University of Georgia, we really pride ourselves on our culture and how we do things. And I think the first step to that is really early in the recruiting process. The recruiting process is kind of crazy these days, as early and as young as it's getting.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that we're finding the right type of kid and the right type of family that it places a certain importance on academics and more stuff outside of baseball, because we found that there's a direct correlation between how a kid goes about his business in the classroom, how he goes about his business in the weight room, and then how he performs and progresses on the baseball field. Okay. And we really try and intertwine all of those things. Our academic people, our weight room strength coach does a great job of getting after these guys. And then we transition all of that stuff into our practices on a daily basis. Our head coach loves
Right.
having high energy. He loves guys that are getting after it. He loves tough, gritty players, and that's kind of what we pride ourselves on. If we get that, and then obviously there's got to be a certain level of talent, but if we get that all meshed together well, then we feel like we like our chances to be successful as a program.
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of to go back on what you mentioned in the beginning, in terms of how the recruiting process has kind of really turned, so, young and really recruiting kids at such a young age. What are your opinions on that? Like, I don't want to get you in any trouble here, but I guess what are your opinions on that? Or like, if you could give any, kids who might be going through that, right now, because the reason I ask is because I see a lot of kids, who commit maybe in eighth grade or as a freshman. And one for me, just kind of looking back, on my experience, with that, like one, like you don't even know where you're going to be in a few years. So like for me, I feel like that's kind of like a weird judgment call for these kids. But then also there are many stories that come out where college programs, then don't have the space for them, or don't have the money for them. And then maybe some, get their spot in the team taken away. Cause, up until they sign that letter, it's all just a verbal agreement, like nothing's, official until you sign your, NLI. So I guess like, what would you say to some kids out there who are maybe going through the situation or, debating whether to commit or not?
Yeah, that's a great point. The three of us were fortunate enough to go through that process a little bit, and have a chance to play college baseball. And any kid that has that chance or that opportunity to talk to any college coach, no matter what level, is really has such a great opportunity compared to the rest of the world. And you kind of forget when you're bottled down in on it, uh, how much that opportunity, you really need to take advantage of it and be grateful for it. I tell a lot of kids, you just need to enjoy the recruiting process. Don't be in a hurry. I think a lot of kids these days, they get excited, and rightfully so. They're getting a lot of calls. They're excited. Their friends are committing. They feel a little bit of pressure. Maybe mom and dad are pressuring them into, hey, what are you going to do? How are you going to be successful? This, and this. And I really
Right.
think back, I'm not that old. I'm 32, but back when I was coming through high school, if it was as early as it is now, I don't think I would have had the opportunity, because I just wasn't as skilled, wasn't big, didn't really mature. I was kind of a late bloomer. So I tell kids everyone's recruiting story is kind of different, and don't let anyone pressure you into that, and don't feel any pressure. You really need to enjoy
Absolutely.
that time. It's a great time of your life, to sit at the house and have colleges call, or you calling colleges and just touch base, because not everyone gets that opportunity. You really need to enjoy it. And then I think you and your family, the kid and the family, really need to sit down and figure out what's best for them. I think both ends, the school and the kid, need to do what's best for them, not necessarily what they think might be the coolest on social media, what might be the coolest to their friend, or get pressured in any way like that. I mean, the way it's going right now, obviously with COVID and everything, it's hard for kids to get to campuses. There's not a lot of contact, and
Yeah.
kids are still committing left and right. And some kids you feel bad for, like you're saying, if they decommit later, or someone tells them we don't have a spot, because the kid's excited. He's got all the gear. They go to the store, and the mom gets a shirt, the dad gets a hat, and they're all pumped up. And then in a couple of years, they tell them, "Hey, sorry, we don't have a spot for you." That's gut wrenching, I can only imagine having to make that phone call, or being on the receiving end of that phone call. It's not a good conversation. So I know that we as a staff try to avoid that at all costs, and we really set the precedent, and try and make a commitment, just like the kid does to us, that, hey, this is what we decided. Everyone's in. Everyone is the right fit for everybody. No matter what happens, we're going to be there for you. You're going to come take an importance in academics, and we're both going to fulfill our end of the bargain.
Of course. And I think your point about social media is definitely a big factor. Like you don't want to hear that, because that's kind of, like, I guess a silly reason to commit to a college, but it is such a big influence on our lives and social status, and, just everything, like how big social media has gotten. So I think that definitely does play a factor, for kids to want to announce and have those like cool edits and, get all the likes and shares and all that stuff. But
No
yeah,
doubt. I think it's normal for any human, not just necessarily, and I'm not picking on kids or anything like that. I think
yeah,
myself, anyone, you see someone else with a fancy car, you see someone else with a fancy house, and you want that, even though, like you're saying, that the Instagram or the Twitter life isn't really necessarily how their life is on a daily basis. It's just kind of showing you a snapshot of what they want you to see. you know. So
Yeah.
I think you really need to understand that, and kids need to understand that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So going back to when I was, introducing you guys, you and the podcast group over there, you guys are trying to start something up of your own. So one, I just kind of want to know how this all manifested, like the origins of it, and just hear both your opinions on it. Like, what's your goal for it? Just a quick overview of what you guys are trying to do over there.
Absolutely. So Brock and I are going on a friendship that's about, I guess, 4 years now, really.
Yeah, something like that.
So we've had conversations throughout all that time, and just constantly picking each other's brains, coaching talks, recruiting talks, things like that. And in all of those conversations, we're constantly bringing up our network of people and other coaches who we've been blessed and fortunate enough to meet along the way, and just how productive our calls with them are every time we have the chance to speak to any of them. And with that being said, we wanted to move forward with an idea that we've really had for some time now, but working with some other resources in the area and some other people who are going to be involved in this project. We're really bringing together coaches across the country, getting them on the phone with pro players, college players, trying to encourage people who follow baseball to learn about the game through these experiences of the coaches that we've been lucky enough to get to know. And they have some great stories. They have some great teaching points that
Absolutely.
Coaches who are eager to get into the game, players who are trying to advance their game to the next level, anybody in that area will find benefit to listening to the conversations that honestly Brock and I have on a daily basis, but now we're looking to find a way to potentially get in the hands of more people, because we feel it's so valuable, the information that these coaches have, and it can really change the lives of whether it's a coach, again, trying to get into the industry, find a new role, or if it's a high school player who's trying to, like you said, commit to his dream school and put it on social media, whatever it might be. We feel like we have a lot of information and a lot of great minds available to us, and we want to find a way that there.
I think,
Gotcha.
like Steve's saying, we've been fortunate enough to have a good network of colleagues and coaches, friends, and even older coaches that have really helped us along the way. And people for a couple of years have been telling us, hey, we need to do something and get that out there a little more. And people have been asking us a lot of questions. And someone finally came to us with the idea to do it about a year ago, and we're finally kind of breaking the ground on it and moving forward with it. But I think we were fortunate enough to be at a couple different programs and see how things are run differently at every level, and see how things are run differently within the same level, just by, like we talked about earlier, whether it's the culture or just how you do things on a daily basis. I think coaches obviously play a big part in the everyday lives of the student athletes, and how you impact young people, and I think that people are looking to the older generation and successful people to kind of want to know, hey, how'd you do it? What'd you do? And stuff like that. And me and Steve are coming up through it and trying to be successful. And we're still looking and trying to get answers. So we're just trying to connect everyone and trying to learn some stuff for ourselves, because it's always about learning. I don't think many people really create their own concepts, or there's nothing new. I mean, you still have to get three outs in an inning. You still have to score more runs than another team. It's just a matter of how are you going to do that? What do different guys do? Different philosophies.
Yeah.
What you've seen that works, what you've seen that doesn't work. And I think that's what we're really trying to do.
Okay. So how do you guys feel about all of these like different ways of coaching? And I'm sure you guys, have your own, I guess, how am I trying to say this? I guess like values, or maybe your ways of like teaching hitting or fielding or whatever. Because I remember I was talking to Michael McHenry on this podcast. He's a former catcher with the Pirates, and we were talking about different ways to recover, like today's players versus when he played. And he was saying, you have to sift through all this information nowadays. So it's almost like a blessing and a curse. And I guess I want to know your opinions on, all these like different ways of coaching, and probably having to like sift through it, because there's so many coaches on social media and so many like coaches, trying to give their opinions and, try to create like the next best thing. So will this kind of be something you guys address on the podcast, or like, how do you feel about this like state of coaching now?
Yeah, like Brock was just saying in his comments, like every day you're trying to learn something new and trying to improve. Like you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not waking up every day and trying to figure out how you can be the best version of yourself that day, and what new information you can take that's out there and apply it to your coaching and become a better coach in that way. With that being said, like you said, there's so much of information available to everybody right now. I think all the time how I wish I could be a player right now, playing with the social media content that's available to players across the world, because you can really start to self-coach in a way with the amount of information that's out there. But for me, luckily being with the Twins and having some great hitting coordinators above me and some coaches who have been teaching me since I've been hired, they've been phenomenal in the information, of communicating the information that they want taught up and down the organization. So for me, I have to do my best coaching in terms of listening to the coordinators and the coaches above me and learning what they want applied at each of our affiliates in the Twins organization. And since I've joined the organization, they've been phenomenal in that way. And Donegal Ferguson, our hitting coordinator, has been phenomenal in teaching me what he wants accomplished. So while many things might be out there and there's a ton of information for players to sift through right now, each organization is going to have what they feel is important and what they want to emphasize, and then they're going to work to communicate that to their coaching staff. So I'll let Brock touch on what he might feel.
Yeah, I think like what both of y'all said, there's so much information out there, and like we talked about earlier with social media, that these kids are going to find the information. So you better be very knowledgeable and do your own research to help explain or combat whatever you're teaching or whatever you're not necessarily going against, but there's some baseline information that you're, when you run a program or when you're doing something that you kind of want your kids to do it a certain way. Now, with that being said, I think some of the best coaches and the most elite coaches have an act for, okay, this works for player A, but player B on the same team needs to hear it a different way. He might not need to be yelled at. He might not need to be hugged. He might not respond the same way to you telling him something in front of other people. It's just, you've got to be able to be versatile as a coach, I feel like, and you've got to be able to interact with kids these days when they have so much information, and it's good. It's good that everyone has information. It makes everyone better. When the kids are questioning you, hey, I saw this drill on Twitter. What do you think of it? Hey, I saw this. Do I do this? Stuff like that. I think it really helps the coach-player relationship, and that's, I think, what it boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about a versatility, because you're absolutely right. There's so much information out there, and any kid can really just pick apart a coach if he has loopholes, in what he's teaching. So that was absolutely a great point. So,
and honestly, that's just as important in the coach-player relationship. Like the player should feel confident enough to approach his coach with an idea in a respectful way, and a good coach should be respectful in listening and understand that he's probably getting that information from some source, whether it's social media or an outside hitting coach. But just being respectful of the fact that there's many ways to do things, and it's your job as a coach to work with that player and build the relationship in a way where you can both agree on what the right move is for that particular player.
No doubt. So last question I have for both of you. Steven, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to switch gears in here because you kind of answered this question in your first response. I was going to kind of ask you, what are you trying to bring from Notre Dame that could, benefit the players over the Twins? And I mean, unless you have, a different answer, you're really harping on the a communication factor, up and down a organization. So I guess what I wanted to ask you now is, what's it been like working with the Twins and all that young talent that they have there? Because around the league, they're known for their bats, and even in the minor league system, I know they drafted that kid Sabato out of UNC. I'm not sure if you've worked with him yet, but what's it been like, working with those guys? And then Brock, I know you got drafted by the Giants, I believe, if my research is correct.
That's correct.
So then I wanted to ask you, what from your professional playing days, and I guess just from your playing career as a whole, are you trying to bring to the players over at Georgia? So Brock, you can go first since I kind of threw a curveball at Steve there.
No, you're good.
My bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like we talked about earlier, I think any experience you have, whether it's coaching, playing, really molds you into who you are and how you're going to interact with your players. I think me being fortunate enough that I played at Alabama, was able to play at a high level, was able to get drafted. Then I came back when I got done playing and coached at a junior college, then went to volunteer at Georgia State, then went back to Alabama as a coach, then back to Georgia State as the hitting guy, and now I'm at the University of Georgia. So in my young career, I've had a lot of different stops, and I think you just learn stuff along the way. I think sometimes I'll sit back and really think I had the answer 7 years ago, and then I look back 2 years ago and I'm thinking, man, was I really teaching a catcher to do that? Nowadays I wouldn't even think, I make fun of people who do that or whatever it may be, Right. But I think from a playing aspect, what I feel like is you can just relate to the players. That being myself, I'm the youngest guy on our staff, and I can just relate to the players a little more because my playing career was closer. But I think I think the guys respect you when you play at a high level, but I also think that no matter what you're doing coaching wise, the level you play at doesn't really matter. I think it's that's cool for the first week or something, that they get to know you. Oh man, this guy played in the SEC. Oh man, this guy was an all conference player. Hey,
Yeah.
this guy, got drafted. But they sift through that in a week if you don't know what you're talking about. Kids are smart enough nowadays with social media, like we talked about, to really call you out on that stuff and be like, man, you were just fortunate enough to be athletic and played at a time where the players weren't as good or whatever it may be. But I think I can relate to him because I didn't play much early in my career. So I can understand when some of the guys get frustrated that they're sitting on the bench. I feel like I can really relate to that. I can relate to kids that are struggling a little bit, and just give them a little positive encouragement, that, hey, you keep working hard, you keep doing this, good things are going to happen. Just go about it the right way on a daily basis, and something good's going to happen, because this game will beat you up, and you just got to stay positive with it.
Absolutely. So, Steve, over to you.
Yeah, going back to your original question, honestly, the question pertained to me so specifically, being that my role within the Twins requires me spending so much time at our Dominican Academy and working with our DSL team.
Okay.
So the process of working with those players is so similar in my mind to how a major Division I operation should be going as well. So for me, while the transition was from ops to hitting and the transition was from college to pro, I'm actually at an affiliate that probably, of all the affiliates in professional baseball, the DSL probably mimics a college setting most closely. And I say that because, first and foremost, the players are the same age. They range somewhere between 17 and 21 years old, just like college players here in the States. And then on top of that, they're spending all of their time living at the academy and eating, working out, sleeping, going to school, doing baseball, going to practice. So
Right.
of all the affiliates in professional baseball, the DSL is probably most like a major college program. And your question originally was, what kind of things can we take from Notre Dame to my work here with the Twins? And honestly, so much of the processes that we used at Notre Dame to become an organization that runs like an ACC Division I program, many of those lessons and processes and scheduling and organizational thoughts absolutely carry over to the work that we're trying to now do with our Dominican summer team in Boca Chica. So taking any of the information that I learned in my time as the ops in terms of how the program was run, what kids in that particular age group need the most, what resources they need help with, and things like that, has absolutely been so beneficial to me now, probably more so than any other coach working in minor league baseball, just because of the affiliate that I'm working with and the age group of the players that I'm working with.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So that's all I got for you guys. You guys were very generous with your time, and I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. And if you guys don't mind, just like for 1 minute, hang on after I finish recording.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.